On today's show, we have Sophie Alcorn, who is the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law, the fastest immigration law service in Silicon Valley. She's a world-renowned speaker and has received several awards. And today we're going to talk about all your startup needs to know about immigration law. Sophie, thank you for taking the time today to be on Silicon Valley.
You're welcome, Sean. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Sophie, can you tell us a little bit about your background, your career up to this point?
Yeah, so I am a second-generation immigration lawyer. My dad was an immigration lawyer, and I've been practicing for almost 11 years now. And I first got my start at my dad's law firm in Southern California when I was 3 years old, pushing buttons on the phone and trying to send faxes when I was 7 and giving people the wrong directions before there was Google Maps when I was the receptionist when I was 14. And I started my own law firm, Alcorn Immigration Law, here in Mountain View in Silicon Valley about 5 years ago, out of my kitchen, when my kids were 1 and 4 years old. And over the last 4.5 years, we've grown really fast. We have a team of almost 20 people who are practicing immigration law together, attorneys and paralegals, and we're helping thousands of people around the world every day.
That's insane growth, 20 people in 4 years.
It's a service company too. There was no angel investor or VC.
So in other words, you had to have been profitable to actually grow. Are you sure you're in Silicon Valley?
I know, it's strange, right?
Let's talk a little about what was the decision to start your own law firm. And I really want to ask, if you were at your dad's law firm, I mean, it's in your blood. It's this whole generation thing. What's changed? Was there motivation? And was your dad ever do immigration law? Or, you know, Sophie, there's other ways to make a dollar.
My dad tried to dissuade me from practicing immigration law a lot. I remember in college talking about going to law school, and he was like, "Are you sure? If you do that, it's going to mess up the way you think. You're going to be weird. Lawyers are weird. Are you sure you want to do that?" And I thought he was doing reverse psychology on me, and so I was like, "No, I'm going to do it." And I really didn't want to copy him. I wanted to do my own thing, and I had studied international relations at Stanford, and my mom's from Germany, so I grew up speaking German, and I lived in Florence, Italy, and studied Italian, and Moscow, Russia, and studied Russian, and so I loved meeting people from all around the world. And I thought maybe I would go into the State Department or something, but that law school would be a great next step. So I went to law school, had a bunch of internships, tried a ton of things, and eventually just realized that there were all these values that my dad stood for that I really, really admired. And it was a lot about helping people, making a difference in people's lives, supporting people who wanted to then, you know, help their companies or their families and change the world. And that was really inspiring, and that's what attracted me to immigration law, even when it was not a cool thing to practice. So and my dad passed away 5 years ago, so that was one of the things that led me to start my own firm, and also a change in family circumstances. I had little kids, and I was facing getting a divorce, and I needed a way to stay in Silicon Valley. So it was not ever the plan, but when life changed and things happened, I decided to follow my heart and do this thing that makes a difference in people's lives when I was in a tough time, because at least, even if I didn't know what was going on in my own life, I at least knew that I would be able to help other people. And so that's, come back and multiplied, and I'm really appreciative of that.
So in that situation, I mean, there's so much going on in your life. How did you have time to build a business? And what I mean by that is you had to go and find your customers. You had to work with them.
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom before I started the law firm, and I didn't have a recent professional network in Silicon Valley at all. So, I mean, I could have effectively, have moved here from another part of the world and been starting from scratch. So it was a lot about networking. I started a meetup group. I talked to everybody I met. I was really nervous at first, and so my mantra for a long time that I would just repeat over and over was fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. And then later somebody told me, no, it's fake it until you believe it, because you already are it. But I was super nervous and scared, so it was a lot of just informational interviewing and asking people and being like, I really admire what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Will you please help me? I'm a lawyer. They don't teach us how to run businesses. How do I do this? I would love to learn from you. Can we have coffee? So just basically asking everybody I met for help and then being really diligent about following up. And that's how I built my network.
So let's talk about those first 3 months or that first client.
Yeah.
What was that like to onboard them? How did you go about getting them? What tips can you give that founder out there starting their own venture right now?
Yeah. So my dad had just passed away. I had been thinking about relaunching my career for about a year at that point. And I actually ended up at a Stanford class it was a continuing studies program called Building a Career of Meaning and Impact. And it was a 2-weekend workshop based on design thinking. And at the end, we all had to raise our hands and commit to our mini experiments in front of the class. And so, I had 2 little babies. I had gained a lot of weight during pregnancy. So I raised my hand and I was like, my name's Sophie. I'm an immigration lawyer, fake it till you make it, fake it because I didn't believe in myself at that point, even though I'd been doing this essentially my whole life. And I'm gonna go in the attic, get down the box of old suits, see if anything still fits, give the rest away and get some new suits and go to a continuing education class. And somebody saw me and she said, oh, you're an immigration lawyer? And I was like, yes. And she's like, well, are you licensed actively? And I was like, yeah, I am. She said, well, my husband has this company. Do you know how to do H-1Bs? I said, I do. She said, well, maybe you could help him. And so basically, the H-1B is a visa. It has an annual lottery that happens every April 1st. And this was like March 12th. So it was the perfect mini experiment because I helped this one company do like 42 H-1Bs in 2 weeks, pulling all-nighters at this place, working with the manager. We were both doing like admin work all night long to get it done. But we did it. And I learned so many valuable, I barely made any money off of it, but it was perfect. It was time-bound. It was a real client with a real need. I got in there and I did all the steps from A to Z. It was like great user feedback, client experience. I got to see what really mattered to him, and I got to learn about myself. And it was so different from raising kids because, you know if you're done, you either win or you lose. Somebody pays you money. These things weren't happening in my life as a mom before that. So I learned a lot from it. And from that, I could say, oh yeah, I do these cases all the time, It gave me the confidence boost.
So then how did you leverage that to get that second and third client?
So then I wasn't sure that I was going to start my own practice at that point. I was actually applying to a bunch of immigration law firms in the Bay Area. And I wrote my cover letter, and when I was proofreading it, it made me think again, because it basically said, hi, I'm Sophie. I'm really passionate about immigration law. I'm good at social media because I had a brief bread baking business out of my kitchen for a while that I got customers from social media on. And I like speaking to groups of people and networking. So please hire me because I will bring money to your company. But then when I read it, it was like, wait a minute. why would I commute an hour and a half to do a full-time job doing this for somebody else when I could do it myself? So I just thought I would I really did. I just had like a little rolling briefcase, and I would go to the Starbucks in downtown Mountain View and meet with one person at a time. And the question was how to get clients. And my friend is a wonderful designer, and she was encouraging me to start a website so I could start attracting clients. And somebody suggested, well, maybe you should choose mountainviewimmigrationlawyer.com because that's very specific. And she just said, no, honey, like you gotta think bigger than this. You gotta create a brand. Like, why limit yourself to being a single immigration lawyer in Mountain View? It could be so much more. So we got the website up, and I created all my social media profiles on Yelp and websites for lawyers and LinkedIn. And I started getting some leads and phone calls, and then I would do my own meetup group for startup founders. And I think at one point I got Deutsche Bank Labs to host it, which was really swanky. And then I figured out that there's this nonprofit called Forward.us that Mark Zuckerberg and a bunch of people started, and they were really focusing on immigration advocacy that year. So I volunteered there and I partnered with them, and then I got to speak at Draper University and host this event. And so it was really just about combining opportunities, leveraging contacts, and just jumping in and volunteering and being useful to everybody I could be. And then people kept me in mind and started referring, and the website started working, and yeah.
Sounds like you're doing the ultimate biz dev there.
Yeah, trial by fire.
So let's go and talk a little bit about the immigration process and the different types of visas out there.
Yeah.
How many different types are there?
Probably like 50 with a bunch of variations. And then there's things that aren't visas but are also immigration statuses and green cards. There's probably about, there's probably less than 10 though that are really relevant to startup founders coming to Silicon Valley.
Which ones are there? Which are the 2 or 3 that a founder here or someone that wants to start a company here really needs to know, or best to have enough understanding that they can then go to an immigration lawyer or someone else and get more information on?
Okay, so super high level overview. If you were born in the United States or you have a citizen parent, then you're going to be a US citizen. Everybody else needs permission to come here and live here and work here. So our system has temporary statuses and permanent statuses. And permanent statuses, those are green cards. They're longer term, they take several years. Sometimes founders want to get a green card before they start a company, but they don't necessarily have to do it that way. And there's different flavors, but essentially you can get a green card through work sponsorship or being famous or investing money or through a family member, basically. And it can take a long time.
So anyone on this show is famous enough to get one, right?
This is KMBT, and YouTube. So here we go. Thank you to all of Sean's fans out there. You make this possible. So yeah, if you want a green card, get on this show, and then you'll have the credentials to do it.
And to find out more information about us, go to SiliconValleySuccesses.com or our Facebook, LinkedIn page, or any of our other social media channels where we have up-to-date information on what's happening here in Silicon Valley and our media empire. So Sophie, back to you.
Thanks. All right, so let's focus though on the temporary statuses to be here. Those are visas. They're non-immigrant visas, which means non-immigrant means you're not necessarily planning to get a green card. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But this is where like the alphabet soup comes in. And the biggies are H-1Bs, Os, Ls, TNs, and E2s. And the only reason they have those letters is because that's the section of the law that they're in. It's like the silliest thing, but that's where they come from. So I would say that founders who want to start their own company here need to know about a few different things than CEOs or HR who are hiring in the United States. So for founders, the big ways to come here, if they have a company in a foreign country, they can come on an L visa as a intercompany transferee, moving from the foreign headquarters to the US office to run that, if they worked there for 1 year out of the last 3 years. There's also the O visa, that's the one for extraordinary ability. If you're like a serial entrepreneur and you've had exits, or you're a thought leader, or you're a researcher, we might be able to qualify you to be an employee of your US company. Similarly, the H-1B is for an employee of an American company, but just for a professional worker. Or an E-2, which is only available for certain countries, so not India, not China. Interestingly, we have a treaty with Iran, so Iranian citizens already in the US could potentially get that, but with the travel ban, Iranians can't come here right now. So that's kind of what founders need to know. And then if you're hiring, if you've just raised a seed round or a Series A and you suddenly need a lot more engineers, it's sort of different. The things to know about for that are that you're probably going to get people who already have H-1B visas who want to transfer, and that process usually takes about 2 months, and they can generally then work for your company in 3-year chunks, and they'll want green card sponsorship from you. If you're hiring like that brilliant AI researcher from Switzerland, maybe you could get him his own extraordinary ability O1 visa. And there's a few other special little quirky things, like there's special visas for people from Canada, Mexico, Australia, Singapore, and Chile. So any professionals from those countries have an easier chance of getting a working visa. And there's also students. Anybody who comes to the United States to get a university degree, like a bachelor's degree, master's, PhD, they all get a 1-year work permit after they graduate. And if they majored in a STEM field, so science, technology, engineering, or math, then they can have a 2-year extension. So they can have up to 3 years to work in the US. So students are looking for jobs, want you to hire them. They can work for you for up to 3 years. And then basically their hope and the expectation is that you'll be putting them in the H-1B lottery every April, because there's more demand for those visas than they are available.
So say I win the lotto,
Yeah.
and I get that H-1B.
Yeah.
But after a while, I don't like that company.
Yeah.
Do I have options or not?
Well, you can always leave the United States. Or you can transfer. You can transfer your status to another company. But one of the crazy things is that so I was talking about non-immigrant visas and then green cards, the permanent thing. So the green cards are based on what country you were born in. And there's a limit to how many green cards people from a single country can get in any given year. And so it means there's these long backlogs for people from India and China, which really affects Silicon Valley. So these are totally rough numbers, but last year some data came out. And so I think that if you're from China and a company sponsors you for a green card right now, it's probably going to be like a 5 to 20 year wait. And if you're from India and you just have a bachelor's degree, it could be like a 50 to 60 year wait. And if you're from India and you're even more accomplished and you have a PhD, it could be like a 150 year wait. So that's the situation. So basically, if you're in that interminable process, you get your H-1Bs for 3 years at a time, and you could switch between companies, but those individuals aren't allowed to do consulting on the side or work for Uber. They're totally dependent on their employer, and they're talking about canceling the work permit for their spouses. So that makes it a little more challenging. And in Congress last year was discussing there was a proposal to eliminate the quota system, so to make the law less racist by removing the per country limits. But if they do that, there's such a high demand for green cards in the US that, and they averaged out the wait time across the world, everybody would have to wait 8 years if they're starting now to get a green card. So I think we just need more green cards to be available for people, but that's the way it is right now.
So then I gotta ask, if there's any law for the whole immigration system that you would change, what would it be?
Oh my God, we need complete immigration overhaul. The law is really old, it's really messed up. It doesn't have any awareness of like virtual work or the gig economy or remote working or consulting. It really limits people's abilities to do those things. And I mean, that's just based on the employment side, right? So I would also, for startups, create an actual startup visa so that anybody with like, I don't know, 250K from a US angel or VC would actually be able to start a company here just based on that. I mean, that would be incredible if there was also a green card pathway for those startup founders. Because right now we're trying to use all these creative maneuverings to help them in spite of the fact that that doesn't exist. But if I could make one change and only one change to immigration, I would end family detention so that we're not separating kids from their parents anymore.
Back to startups. Say I'm a university student, I majored in a STEM field, and I want to create my own company. I'm allowed to stay here for 3 years and do it, or what should I know? Or so say I had two paths. One, I start my own company, or I find an employee. If I find an employee, what companies have the best chances of actually getting me that visa to work?
Okay, so like you're graduating in June and you're trying to figure out if you should get a job, who you should work for?
Job, work for, or do my own thing.
Or do your own thing. Okay, so if you're gonna find a job, then any US company, so like an LLC, a C Corp, it could be based out of Delaware like a lot of startups are, it doesn't have to be, it could be based in California. Any company can sponsor you. The companies are supposed to have the ability to pay you. So you would want a company that can actually pay your salary, that has revenue, that's profitable, that hasn't had layoffs. Amazing, right? The stories you hear. So yeah, it could be a big company, it could be a small company. We've done this for super early stage startups that just had a business plan and like, I don't know, maybe 60K of cash in the bank. I mean, that's like really pushing it edge case, but it can get approved. And then if you want to start a company, it's a little bit goofy, but you can do that on your first year with the regular OPT work permit. For your second year though, we have to create a training plan for the STEM OPT where we're showing that somebody else is going to supervise your work and that you're going to be learning. So it's a more delicate case if you're the CEO, but we would need to show that there's a board that you're accountable to or an advisor at a university or somebody who you're reporting to who's making sure that you're meeting your learning objectives from your degree program. And then the question is, how do you work there after all that ends? So you'd either have to get some sort of green card during the process or put yourself in the H-1B lottery to hope to get picked.
So in that process of either applying for a visa with a company sponsoring you or starting your own, where do you see the most mistakes being made?
Ooh. Well, I think at this point, with where we are in the administration, people are not doing this themselves anymore. So I don't see that mistake being made as much. But it is really important to be strategic from the beginning. So the companies who we work with, they're emailing me even before they make an offer. Like, hey, Sophie, there's this Canadian accountant. We want her for XYZ role. Would it work? How long would it take? You know, because it's so specific. And they want to know, like, what are the risks? How likely is it that she'll get approved? You know, what do we have to pay? So it's important to have those conversations at the very, very beginning. And then another really important thing is, you know, gone are the days when you could just churn out repetitive, duplicate petitions for people. They really need to be thought through, the right job classification, the right wage, every detail perfect, supporting documents like letters from the company that detail all of the job duties and how much time, what percentage of the time the person's going to be spending on it. In some cases, for like O visas, lots and lots of letters of recommendation. So just if you're going to, you know, work with a lawyer basically, but make sure that there's a lot of thought and planning done before filing, because after you send everything to the government, you're really limited at that point in what you can do to bolster your application if they want more information. So
With all of this, it sounds like it's a lot more difficult to hire someone that doesn't have U.S. citizenship.
yeah.
How much more difficult would you say it is, just briefly?
Yeah, well, so there's statistics about that. For H-1Bs, so you know, there's bad news and there's good news for companies. So the bad news is that it is objectively getting harder in this national averages for H-1Bs. Under the prior presidential administration, they were approved about 93% of the time, I think, and the last count I saw was that they were now only approved about 70% of the time. So the denial rate was 5% and went up to like 30%. So that's a big increase.
So with that though,
Yeah.
people are going to have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
If people want to ask you questions, what's
Yeah.
the best way to go about find out more information about you and
Yeah.
Alcorn Immigration?
Yeah. So you can reach out to us at any time. Our website is www.alcorn.law. It's ALCORN.LAW. We're also on social media, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Twitter, so please reach out. And the other good news is that the H-1B lottery is getting easier for employers. They're digitizing it, and it's going to be less costly. So it's definitely worth trying for any candidates that might be a good fit.
Great. So if anyone has questions, please visit Alcorn, their website. And if anyone wants to find out more about Silicon Valley Successes, visit our website, siliconvalleysuccesses.com, or our other social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, where we provide update information all the time. And once again, thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode of Silicon Valley Successes.
Thank you from all of us at Silicon Valley Successes. We hope you found the information presented today useful in your path to success. For further information on accessing the resources in Silicon Valley, you may visit us on the web at siliconvalleysuccesses.com, on Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you. And remember, we want to help you in your journey to become the next success.